All right, Ben, welcome to Automate All the Things. I'm excited to have you here.
Hey, welcome. Thanks very much, Aaron. Great to be here for my
Yeah, we've
very
got.
first live stream on Twitch, actually.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
listen, it's
cool.
if it brings you any solace, I haven't done that many either, so I don't know if that makes it more, if that makes you more comfortable or less comfortable, but whatever your comfort level, we're really excited to have you here. So, just a moment here, we've got a bunch of folks in the chat. We've got Noah, we've got Raymar, Colleen, a few folks I don't recognize. Maybe these are sheets. So let us know in the chat if you are kind of on Team Sheets, if you're one of Ben's students, or if we've got Penny. Welcome, Penny. Excited to have you here. Yeah, I think there's a lot of excitement here, Ben. So, we know each other through Twitter, and kind of I'm familiar with your work. But how about you just give a quick intro into yourself for folks who may not be familiar with all the work you do?
Sure, yeah. If I go back 5 years, then I was a corporate accountant and sort of in that headspace that everyone probably can relate to, where you just don't feel like you love your job, but you're going through the motions. And, you follow these people on Twitter who seem to be doing, have found this intersect of their skills and what the market will pay and what they enjoy.
Right.
And I enjoyed all like the technical aspects of things. So enjoyed Excel, the VBA coding, the SQL, building dashboards, and did not enjoy accounting and
Right.
working in a big corporate firm. So I left that job without much of a plan. Actually, the first thought was to start a paid newsletter for the accounting industry. So I was like 5 years ahead of where we are
Yeah.
today. This was like
This
all the
this
rage.
would be this is the idea. This is the
Um,
2021 idea.
yeah, yeah. But I actually started it. So I quit the job and started working on that. And then about a month into it, I just sort of had a conversation with my wife one day, and I just said, I just can't do this. I don't have enough passion about accounting. Um, so kind of wiped the slate clean and decided I wanted to work in the tech industry. And my first thought was a web developer.
Mm,
So, but the one crucial thing I did that, the sort of piece of advice for every job hunter, job seeker is to get yourself out there
right.
online with a blog or portfolio, whatever it is these days. But it was a blog back then. And so I started writing online, and I didn't really know exactly, as I said, where I was going to end up or anything, but I wrote about spreadsheet stuff, Excel and Google Sheets, SQL. I started learning Ruby on Rails, so I had a bunch of posts about that randomly early on. Tableau, literally any tool and any use case I could think of, I would just be like, right, I'll write about it.
Right.
Yeah, started applying for web development jobs, didn't get anywhere, unsurprisingly. But the few Google Sheet posts I'd written had started to catch on in search traffic. I think because a lot of, no one was writing about Google Sheets 5 years ago
Right.
because it was still growing, still establishing itself in the market. And yeah, just a few client requests came through of, hey, I saw your blog post about this dashboard you built in Google Sheets. I have a small business. Can you build something like that for me? And that was right around the time when I was pretty despondent about how everything was going. I'd been out of work for, coming on 6 months, whatever, and I thought this isn't working, this whole push to be a web developer. So yeah, I thought I'll take these client requests and see what happens. And that just, they kept going. I sort of focused a bit more on the data analysis niche, which led to an opportunity to teach data analysis for General Assembly, which is where I'd previously taken a course. They were looking for instructors on data analysis, which was the area I knew from
Right.
my job. So I did that, taught 3 courses there, and then kept on going basically
Yeah.
today. And somewhere along the way, started teaching through my own courses and slowly transitioned from sort of 100% client work early on. And well, I did teaching actually for clients, so it was a mix of client consulting and client teaching. Then that became slowly 50-50 with the online courses that I was creating, and slowly that has moved now to almost 80-20 or even 90-10 sort of towards the courses,
Yeah.
and the training side of things.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this before, but like it's so interesting that like similar to me, like I never went out and wanted to be a course creator, right? And like
Yeah.
I didn't want to be the Airtable dude or the automation dude. Is this something that
Yeah.
I was like, hey, this is really interesting, I should keep doing it? And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's very easy for us to sit here today and like, oh yeah, I knew this was always what I was gonna do, and like iron out those parts of this process where actually we had no idea. We just wrote things and threw like spaghetti on the wall and see what
Yeah.
stuck and said, okay, we should do more of that. And luckily, like we both enjoy, but like I know you're a huge, obviously a Sheets lover, and I'm now a relational database and Airtable lover and just automation writ large. So that's great. I'd love to, for folks who again like are not familiar, like how would they learn about? So I'm sure there's a bunch of like Sheets fans in joining us. So like, where do you give courses today? How could folks learn more about other courses?
So
This is like your promo. Go ahead, like
yeah,
hook
so
it.
everything is at benlcollins.com.
Yeah.
My Twitter handle is Ben L. Collins. I'm here on Twitch as Ben L. Collins. There's a Ben Collins who's more famous. So I had to put my initial in there. And he's a racing driver from the UK who used to
Okay.
be Stig on Top Gear. I don't know if you know the show Top Gear.
Yeah.
They used to have that, the mystery racing driver in all white overalls with the white helmet on. And nobody knew who he was. But then one day he got, or he leaked that he was the Stig, this racing driver, Ben Collins, and he got thrown off the show, but he wrote a book about it. And occasionally, it's happened like 3 times in 5 years or something, but I'll get an email asking for an autograph.
You should send it.
Hey, I'm the spreadsheet guy. Here's my
Yes. Yeah.
Like, no, I don't want.
That's awesome. Do you so you should just be Ben Collins. Just be like, yeah, Ben Collins. Just like sign a spreadsheet or whatever and send it back, and then they'll be kind of what is going on.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. It must have killed you SEO wise though.
Well, when I started, I didn't even know. I wasn't even thinking about SEO, so I picked Ben L. Collins. And I think one thing that I remember early on was getting hung up on whether I should go all in on my own name as the brand,
Right.
or whether I should think of something clever that relates to data. And because I I had such a wide
Right.
sort of scattergun at the start, I couldn't pick a name on anything because I didn't know whether I wanted to just do spreadsheets or web development, or a bit of everything, or what. So I just went with my name, and honestly, I don't think it matters that much. I think once you've built,
Right.
Your site, what's more important is you sort of, you're providing good value, and then, you're out there helping the community, and then people will find you. So I don't think too many people are finding me by searching for Ben Collins. I think I come up, but I think the racing driver guy does come up.
There's
One day I hope maybe we could do a swap day in the life and see if he's
yeah. If he comes up and tries to explain spreadsheets to folks and you're race driving, I think you both have like a terrible day. There's someone in the chat mentioning you should change your last name to Sheets, like just Ben Sheets, right? Awesome. But we're as much as I have a lot to learn from your process, and I think both of us like just it's cool that we're both haphazardly now teachers of tools that we love. So let's kind of talk about teaching the tool. So we talked about this before. I'd love to like just get a sense of, before we dive into today's agenda, if you will, what we're going to be doing today is Ben will show off building something in Sheets, and then I'll build something similar in Airtable and just get a sense for folks to compare how both are used. But frankly, like I'd love to get a sense of like, I wrote about this today, like what is Sheets good for you, right? Like when do you recommend using spreadsheets? And the answer cannot be always. What for you is like, okay, this is perfect for a spreadsheet?
Well, I would flip it around and say, what is it? When is it not good?
Yeah, sure. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously use spreadsheets probably for more than they're intended for.
Right.
Because it's such a comfortable environment for me that I'll sort of default to just using a spreadsheet and chuck in stuff there. And but I think that the versatility of spreadsheets is one of their amazing strengths. And
Mm-hmm.
so, obviously, any small data project is well suited to
Mm-hmm.
a spreadsheet, to Google Sheets. We're talking about tens of thousands of rows of data sort of size, or up to maybe 200,000 rows of data. As soon as you get beyond that, obviously, spreadsheets are a bad choice because they'll get super slow, or just simply can't handle the data,
Mm-hmm.
and then you need to move up to databases. And there's an argument anyway. If your data is, you've got multiple tables with lots of linking going on and lots of complex formulas, then that's better in a database as well. But if you've got one flat data set of,
Mm-hmm.
my teachable transaction data,
Yeah.
it's just one CSV with like 25 columns and 10,000 rows or whatever it is, then there's the spreadsheet is like the perfect tool to go and deep dive into that in a nice custom way. But then other things, other times when spreadsheets I find are so useful is, the other day I was doing some coding work, and I wanted to add a bunch of HTML tags to like 50 lines of code.
Right.
And so what I did is I copied those 50 lines of code into my spreadsheet, wrote a little formula with text that just added the
Mm-hmm.
custom little bit of code. And there was a reason I wanted to do it that way rather than in the code editor, was because each row had to have something slightly different about it. It sort of went 1, 2, 3, 4, so I needed to add those in, and you've got formula to do things like that in Sheets.
Mm-hmm.
So I just built this tiny little ad hoc tool that just solved that very specific problem at that time for me. So there's loads of times when I find myself just opening a spreadsheet and I'll just use one cell or two
Yeah.
cells or 5 cells and do some crazy little calculation, and the spreadsheet solves it in a way that if I tried to write that with code, it would take me too long. So I don't know, I find lots of little use cases like that. Then the other thing I use them for, is workflows and tracking things. But again, you can make a good case for saying that something like Airtable or Google Tables or whatever would be a better tool for that sort of stuff, because it's more flexible and it gives you things like the Kanban board view. So I'm slowly moving some of those workflow type things into better tools,
Mm-hmm.
for sure, because you do get some benefits there.
That's it.
I
That's what we're
think,
gonna clip. We're gonna clip
yeah,
that part of this stream and be like, Ben Collins, fan of databases.
headline.
Yeah, yeah. Like the rest of the stream that we just got you to say it, but no. But I think there's a few things there where you said, like, first, really interesting. Like, to a worm in horseradish, the world is horseradish. So like for you, Sheets is like the default, and I think that's the case for most people. It was the case for me. Like, I clip it, chip it, exactly. So for me, like, I I grew up on Sheets. Like, I used to work in finance and in data, and like Sheets was just like, it was the best tool and probably is the best tool for that type of information transactions you mentioned. Like, I need a range. Every value can be, it's a row, a cell, the value in it makes sense. And I think for now, for the first time, like, folks do have that ability to structure data in a way that's like human approachable versus like millions of rows. You need a database, you need a developer. You have like these human scale type of tools. But I think, again, like, spreadsheets are just great. Like, and then you can clip that one. You can just clip me saying that I love spreadsheets, and I do
Yeah.
love spending time in spreadsheets. So in you mentioned, like, when something requires linking and data structure, I think really that's where people will create these like really complex workflows of like 8 tabs, content calendars, and task management of like 30, 40 people. And people will just like pull their hair out trying to coordinate this super complex flow in Sheets. And it gives Sheets a bad rap because they're not built to
Yeah.
handle that kind of very complex structured data. And so, that's really, I think, the sad part is a lot of folks use Sheets in a way that they're not intended to or never were intended to. And they do that primarily because it's like the default tool. So
But
I don't,
what I would say,
yeah.
is that the 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 best tool is the one you can do the thing in, even if it's not designed for that. Because if you can, to a point, I mean, if you can open sheets and you can get that job done quickly and it
Totally.
works, then that's the best tool. If it's easier for you to do it in Airtable, then that's obviously the tool. And so, at some point, you have to invest time to learn the right tool for the right job, if to scale or
Right.
whatever it is
Right.
you're doing. But
Right.
yeah, so
I think folks came here like expecting us to like fight, but I think we're very in agreement that like yeah, some things are really good for sheets and some things are good for other tools. So, and if you feel like you're outscaling whatever tool you're using, you can go out and learn a new one. So with that, I'd love to jump into. So I wanted to start this off by like Ben showing me something that I haven't ever touched, which is like scripting within Google Sheets. I used to write janky VBA 10 years ago. So I'm sure that this is going to be much cooler. So, Ben, while I'm kind of architecturing, showing your screen, mind just telling folks what you are going to show to folks?
yeah, sure. Can they see my screen yet, Aaron?
Not yet, not yet. So let me set that up. So now
Yeah,
folks
so
should see your
what I'll
camera.
show you is a tool. And actually, this is another thing that I use Sheets for, and I think that it does a great job for, is building little lightweight tools for filling in the little cracks between your, in your workflows and things. So
Mm-hmm.
I had this problem that I was getting feedback from students on my courses, but it was going through a Google form into a Google Sheet. But then I was having to go into the sheet, copy and paste a bunch of that stuff into emails, write some stuff, hit reply. And because it was such a time consuming process to reply to all this course feedback, I was never getting through it. I would just leave it for weeks and then come in and be like, oh man, there's like 40 replies. I've got to write 40 custom emails now, copying and pasting feedback and answering all the stuff. And it was sort of hard to find time and hard to stay on top of that. So
You're just
what I'll show
boasting
you is
of
this
you're
tool I
boasting
built.
of how many students you have. You're like, oh, too many students to respond individually to all of them.
No.
Okay, I'm messing with you.
Yeah. But it was a legit problem I solved here for me personally, which is why I
Right.
like this one, of automating that process. And so what I'll show you is how I took the form data that comes into Sheets and
Mm-hmm.
automated creating those draft email replies.
Right.
The little cool sort of twist to it is that we use the Google Natural Language API to tell whether it's been a positive feedback or a negative feedback response. And then you can basically, it creates a draft template that takes into account that. And then you can add, the reason I did drafts rather than just automatically replying is I still want to be in that pipeline, that chain, to
Right.
give my own personal opinion. I don't want to just, that'd be really impersonal and not, not a good student experience. Like, it's like you don't care if you just automatically fired off a thanks email when they replied. So I wanted to still read all of their feedback, answer the questions they had, and add my own. But if I can go to my draft email folder and just see like the 10 draft emails already with the email addresses in them, I just open it, read the feedback they left because it's in the email, boom, hit send, fire it off, and I can get through it really quickly then.
Yeah. So you're going to show us how to, kind of put a logic layer on top of Google Sheets using Google Cloud, kind of natural
Yeah,
language
so
processing,
yeah.
and on top of the sheet itself, so automatically and integrates with Google Email. So I'm really excited to see it.
Yeah. I mean, the sheet in this case actually is really just a holder for the data. It doesn't actually do
Right.
too much. It's like the magic's happening in the app script. But let's go and take a look. I'm keeping
Mm-hmm.
half an eye on the comments here as well. Just
Yeah, I got it. So folks are just excited for you to like. AI has never been part of the stream, so we are excited for you to show it off.
well, it worked this morning, so we'll see what happens. Live events.
They're harder, but people are very understanding. If it doesn't work, it's okay. Like people are very understanding. They've seen me mess up very much, so I'm sure it'll go great.
It's all good. You learn when you mess up. Actually, it's when the learning happens. Okay. Well, can they see my screen now? Then now?
Yep. Folks can see your screen. They see that Google form.
Okay. Awesome. So Yeah, let's fill this in. This is the Google form, right? So I'm pretending now I'm acting as a student
Right.
or somebody who's giving feedback on this product, whatever that product is. So I'm going to use my demo account. Oops. I'll say my name is, I'm up to demo 4 on the testing, I think. What's your experience level for norm? Go for that one, shall I? Intermediate. Next, what did I think of product X? Let's say I thought it was excellent. Okay. Love it. We'll do obviously a positive feedback there. So I'll check my draft folder. It's blank right at the moment. So I'll hit submit, and then I'll go back to my draft. So I don't even need to go, hopefully, to my sheet now. I hit refresh. There's a draft email ready for me that it created.
Very cool.
So it's ready with demo up at the top there. Thanks for the feedback on the course. And then because it's positive, it said, glad to hear you enjoyed the course. Here's the feedback. So they get their feedback down here at the bottom. And then so if I read this now, I can say, maybe they asked a question, because I had a much longer feedback form in my actual one.
Right.
I say, in answer to your question, Sheets is always the best. And then we'll hit send. Boom. And it was like that quick for me now to reply to my
That's really cool.
My feedback. So that's the problem. That was what I'm trying to solve.
So if folks want to learn how to do that, you can sign up to Ben's course. No, I'm kidding. We're actually going to go through how to do that. So that's actually really impressive. I love, there's two things I love about that. Like one is that idea of like very like just have that template ready. And the fact that it's a draft also I love is like you're not automating it. You're actually just inserting yourself into the point where you want to be, right? So in that template. So the fact that it's a draft is really cool, and it speaks to that tight integration between Sheets and Google Mail.
Yeah, exactly. And I want it to be as efficient as possible,
right?
But still giving me the opportunity to add that personal touch, because that was super important to me to connect with the student and read every bit of feedback. So here's the sheet. So here's the form data, and then it just adds these two extra columns on the app script that we'll look at. So I have this little thing here as well that I like to do for demos. It's a little checklist as we go. So I'll just check that one off.
Okay.
And as we go, we'll see the progress. It helps me actually just to make sure I don't miss any steps or if I get lost.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'm going to make a copy over my other screen here of that form.
Sure.
Because if I try and start from scratch creating the form as well, we'll be here all night, and that'll be kind of wonderful.
Folks have other things to do. They're excited, but they do also have other things to do.
So here we go. So here's a copy of the form. And so Google Forms is pretty easy to create these things. And so what we'll do is just go to responses quickly though, and hit the green button to also create the spreadsheet that goes with it. So you can see this one's blank.
Yeah.
There we go. And let me just check settings. Okay, so settings are all fine there. So we'll just submit it now, again, just to have some data.
Yeah. While you're writing that out, I'm curious, like, talk to me about the scripting part. Like, what ecosystem of scripting is there on top of Sheets?
So it's called AppScript, and it's JavaScript that runs on Google servers, and it has a little few additional things or specific things to AppScript where it differs slightly than or you have extra things available that you don't have in normal JavaScript, and it extends all of the Google Workspace tools.
Okay.
So what it does is it just basically lets you access the APIs for each of these different workspace things. So Sheets has an API, Gmail has an API, Forms has an API, blah, blah, blah. And they all have these nice AppScript wrappers around them, which makes it really easy to connect with them without having to be super, competent with your coding sort of thing. It's a really easy way actually for beginners to get started coding. And the reason I love it is because you can actually build stuff that's useful straight away. So you're not doing like endless practice loops doing this and loops doing that, and then at the end of it you're like, still I don't know how to build an application that does something for me, which I think is what, web development is pretty hard to get to build something that's genuinely useful. So yeah, app script. So we'll go, here we are. So we've just got that one submission. Hopefully everyone's still on board with us.
Yeah. People are here. Let yourselves know in the chat. We're here.
Tools. So that's just tools, script editor. And what it does is just opens this file here that's attached to this Google Sheet. So it's just a script that goes with the Google Sheet that lets me write now some code here. So we'll clear all this out. I'm just going to add some space so I can sort of keep myself in the middle. And let me just move. I'll tell you what, we'll leave this one here. I'll move this away, that form, so I don't get confused. There's not one over there. So we'll start. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is just add a custom menu. So you see here in my Google Sheet at the moment, I've got these, the standard menus. What we'll do is just add this little bit of code here, which it's a special function called onOpen. And every time I open my spreadsheet, if this function is here in my script, it will automatically run this function as well. So it's going to load or do whatever I tell it to do here when I open my spreadsheet. So we can just simulate that by just pressing run here to say go and run onOpen. It takes a little while the first time you run it, the script. So if we can go and get a cup of tea and come back.
So I think what's funny is I'm going to show you Airtable scripting in a bit, and it feels very much like this, in that like it's a no server, like everything is run on someone else's server, so you don't need to worry about it. You just start building. So this is a lot of fun to watch.
It just abstracts away so much of that plumbing, so you can just focus on what's the thing I'm trying to do. So here we go. So the cool thing is now we've added this little menu up here now in my sheet, this custom menu. And now every time I open this sheet, that menu will show up automatically for me. I don't have to. I only have to run it that one time to show it. So what we'll do now is we'll go and grab the data, and actually the way. So let me copy in a few more things to keep things moving. So I'm going to create another function here, and then.
So if anyone's not a developer, copy and pasting is actually 99% of the job. So this is actually how it feels, to write scripts. It's literally just 99%.
There's a good meme actually on that someone, the book covers for coding. I forget it might be O'Reilly or they have like the picture of the animals always on the front.
Yeah.
And they're always like, it's like do the Python and JavaScript and all these different languages. Someone had a book where they had one of those animals on the front, and it had the title was "Copy and Paste from Stack Overflow." Complete by There's the truth. We just go and run, click around on Stack Overflow and try and copy and paste things in until it
100%.
So this is how I would the next step I would do is I would think through my program by writing out what it's going to do in comments.
Right.
So all of these little double forward slashes mean it's a comment. So what we're going to do is go and get all of the data from the sheets. So we're going to come in here and just grab this data, take off the header row because we obviously don't need to.
Right.
We're not going to create a draft reply for the header. Then we're going to loop over all the data, perform this sentiment analysis, go through these steps, create the draft email at the end here, and then just paste the timestamp into the sheet to show it's been created.
Right. Okay, that feels right. That feels actually relatively doable.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. This is if you do this when you're these programs are always pretty small. They tend to be in a single file, for example, this kind of stuff. And if you write out basically what your program is going to do in this what I call pseudocode, it's just like kind of what it's going to do. Then you come back in and you're just like, right, I'll do this next one here first. To spreadsheet app.get the active spreadsheets. And you just work through this list now, and
Right.
it's really, it's much easier than just if I just had, this big blank white space. It's
Right.
like, oh, this seems intimidating now. So you've kind of, you've thought through the logic. And actually, just to make this a little clearer, what we'll do is say, we'll add the other two scores, the columns, I mean, assessment score and the timestamp when the draft created. Because what we're going to do is get the code is going to fill these two columns in for us. So next, so the first thing we've done is just gone and got the whole spreadsheet object in my code into this variable. Then we're going to get the specific sheet that we need. I'm going to have to keep going fairly quickly, obviously, to get through all of this.
Go for it. Speed through it, my friend. We are with you. And if you're not if you get lost, let us know in the chat. We're happy to.
So the next thing we've done is just gone and got that specific sheet. So if I had, other sheets in here, I'm getting just this specific one now. So the next thing I'm going to do is get the range of data range, and then we'll go and get the actual data itself by saying range.get the value. So all we've done is just, we get the spreadsheet, then we get the sheet, then we get the data range object, and then within that we get the actual values. And then so I guess if tip number one is to write it all out with comments, tip number two is to use this friend, the console.log time. So every time you do one of these little sections is run your program again. Right. Don't fill it all in and wait to the end and then just hope it's going to work, because.
So data is like a general. It's like show me all my variables.
It's
one of the constants. You just defined it above. Okay, got it. Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. Each of these is just a placeholder, and it just points me to this, and then I scan the program says, okay, what's range? Okay, range is pointing to this, and so let's run it now. You'll see what it is. I have to check my permissions because I've added now the spreadsheet service here to my script. I just ran on open again. That's why. So I need to choose. So what it did.
Right. The wrong function. Got it.
Yeah. So choose the feedback one. Okay. So there's the data from my spreadsheet now in my app script, which means it's now available to me to do some stuff. So we'll do a data.shift and then a console.log data. So that just removes the header row. So as I said, let's run it again. So now we're down to we've got this one row. So probably let's just submit another form. And what I'll do is when we're a little bit further through this, I'll give you guys the link to the form as well, so you can all submit it. We'll build it a bit.
You're
brave.
You're pretty brave.
Demo 2. This person can be a phenom. Why not? And it was not very good. So we'll submit. So there it is, and let's just check now again. You just keep doing these sorts of checks. Okay, my code still works with 2 lines, because always what happens is you think it's working, and then you go and change some of the inputs or parameters, and then it breaks. So you've got to keep trying all the time. So next we're going to, if we look actually at that data here, just quickly actually, I'll get rid of that one now. We don't need that one. But this one here, we've got this square bracket to start here, and then we've got like a closing square bracket at the end. So you've got these 2 square brackets, and that means it's an array of items. And then inside, you'll notice I've got those 2 square brackets again, like as an inside. So the first object in this big outer array is like another one. And then again, I've got this second one here. And each of these arrays is one row from my spreadsheet.
Right.
So you can see, this first one, it's got the date, the email, the name, blah, blah, blah. So what we'll do now is, whether I've got 2 or 200, we're going to just loop over that array. So that's the next thing we'll do.
Ben, I'm highlighting this point and when I'm gonna be writing the script in Airtable for a similar use case, I think this is the peculiarity of spreadsheets, if you will. It's, as you said, like their biggest strength and their biggest weakness is that they just assume everything is an array, right? So there is no definition that the first one is an email. That's something you have to know. Whereas when we're going to get to Airtable, we're actually going to say like, go get this table. So sheet one in your kind of mental model, dot email, dot of a specific row, right? And so in that case, right, it's just saying like, okay, we are actually going to name each one of the inputs, which columns in your case, but in our case, it's going to be fields. I'm highlighting that because when we're going to get to Airtable, that's going to be one of the fundamental differences. But I'm with you. People are following.
Okay, cool. So you're talking about it being like a rich data where it's not just a flat piece of data. So that's interesting because I think actually Excel has introduced rich data types. So like it will recognize a latitude and a longitude column, for example, as being mapping data.
Yeah.
And it's not just a number in a cell anymore. So I suspect we'll see that happening
for sure
more in spreadsheets actually. But yeah, for sure, it's an interesting point actually. So what we'll do now is, like I said, we'll loop over this data using this loop called for each. And all that means, it seems complex, but really it's not it doesn't need to be complex. It just says go and grab row one and do something with it, which we define. And when you've done whatever you do with row one, just move on to row two. And so it just saves you having to write, when I is 0, go to this element, then increment I by 1, go to the next one and increment it by 1 again. It just handles all of that looping logic for you. So we're going to just have 2 variables here. So let's make some space. So there we go. So all we do is just set up this loop. We're saying, for each row of the data, and the I is just that counter, which we're going to use in a little bit. So we will move these up now into here. So let's now just do the console.log again, the row, and I'll just comment it there. So all I've done is just put comments in front of these ones so they're not showing up anymore. And we're going to see the row now inside the loop. So let's run. Okay, so now you can see it's subtly different in that it's just showing me the single array now of that one, and then it loops onto row 2 and just prints that one out. So that's obviously not too bad. So what we'll do is let me copy in some stuff now, just save a bit of time as well.
Folks who come to this stream often will realize what organization looks like, and I feel terrible because I am nowhere near as organized as this. So I'm like really impressed right now. This is great.
All right, cool. I've done a lot of webinars, webinar training actually. So I feel like I haven't done this particular one before, but I've done a lot of demos.
It shows.
Okay, it's not working yet. So what we'll do is we printed out the whole row before, and now we're going to deep dive into that row and just print out the item at position 1. And the weird thing is that arrays in JavaScript start at 0. So the first one is 0, then 1. So we're actually getting the second item, which is going to correspond to this row here. Actually, so that looks like it's going to be the email. Let's see. Let's run. Yeah, so that's actually emailing. For some reason, I had it written as name over there. I must have the things in the wrong order, so we'll call it email. And then I'll just run it again, and we can just. So if I run that now, instead of printing that whole row, it's just now jumped right into that inner one and just printed that value. So what we'll do is get all of the different items out. So like if I put these in order, so the timestamp was 1, name and experience, and I've got these. So let's see, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 2, that one's 3, and then feedback is going to be number 4. Oops.
Yeah, so I don't think your first column is timestamp. If you
Is
go
it
back
not?
to your sheet, the one you copy paste. Oh no, it is. Okay, my bad. My bad.
Okay. Okay.
My
Cool.
bad. Go for it.
Right. Yep. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So they're the different. They're just pulling the pieces up now and putting
Right.
them into these variables. So we'll just run quickly and just check that feedback comes through. There we go. So that's just those
Perfect.
two lines there. And the reason I pull that one out is because that's the piece of information we're going to send out to the
Right.
Google API. So actually, and what we'll do before we go too much further, there's one thing I want to do is, if I go and create that draft email that we saw,
Right.
I don't want to create the new draft every single time. I want to I want to
Right.
mark done this one, so I don't go and create this one again. And that's where I'm going to drop that that timestamp, into this here when we're done. So what we're going to do is just first of all check whether this is empty or not before we go too much further. Let's just put that little check in which says that if row 6, I think it is, let's just check. Yeah, there are 7, so it starts at 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's JavaScript, by the way. That's not. That's been there since the dawn of time. So if that is blank, then
Right. Go
let's
ahead.
do all this stuff. Otherwise, we'll just pass on this row. So I just moved that inside that little if block. So if it's blank, let's do all this stuff. Otherwise, we just skip the row and move on. So let me speed up a little here because we're obviously going to these good things all night. So what we want to do now is do this sentiment analysis, but rather than write it all out here, I'm going to come down underneath and create a function that purely just does that piece of the program and then just access it from up here. So let me copy this in because this one's a little more because we've been going half an hour here, so let's speed up then.
You're good. No pressure. Take your time. We're all enjoying this. This is great. I'm loving this.
So this is a new function starting here on row 62. Oops. And it's called retrieve sentiment, and you pass it some string, some value.
Right.
And then what it does is it goes to this endpoint here. And so if I come back to, so we've gone through a ton of stuff here. We're way down here now. So we'll go to this endpoint here. This is the API now. This is the API documentation. What we're going to do is analyze the sentiment. And sentiment is just, was it positive or negative feeling, if you like, encaptured in this text. So we're going to call this API endpoint with a post request, and we'll see that in a moment. We have to pass through this particular piece of data, and then it's going to send back some information about the text, whether it was positive or negative. So let's take a look. So here we go. So this is that exact API just copied, from here, from Google. So I need to have that. Then I'm going to pass my API key, and I'll tell you about that in just a second. This stuff gets a little complex, obviously, but again, you take it from the documentation.
Right. We're just copy pasting here. This feels like a regular post API call.
It's just passing through the parameters, the things that the API needs to see to work. So there was that post method, for example.
Yep.
It wanted to know it was JSON, blah, blah, blah. Then we've got that set up. Down here, we can say, and actually the other important thing to show you is that that's where we pass in the content, which is that value. So, we call the function and we send it this little snippet of text. And then this snippet of text gets put into this special object, which is just imagine a box with a lid on. And that gets sent when we make the request. It's like, okay, here's the piece of text in the box with all the other bits you need, like a key and stuff. That box gets sent through the API. The API opens this box and pulls out that piece of text and drops it in the magic black box, does its stuff, and then in the box, it puts a little folded envelope with a magic little answer in, sends that back to us. And then we get the answer, whether it's positive or negative. And all of that magic happens when we call the API just here. So it's this method. So again, this is AppScript doing all of that logic. I just have a URL, send a bunch of information to that URL, and it fetches what I want and sends it back to me. And then all we're going to do is pass that back then to wherever I called the function from. So pass it back to the main function. So
folks are with you. Folks are excited to see what the output is.
So what I'm going to do is just put my API key. Let's call this global variables. And I'm only doing this because I'm going to keep the API key hidden from being in view.
Do you want me to hide your screen here for a moment?
No, what I'll do is, so all I'm going to do is just put it in here in a second, off screen if you like, and then bring my.
Oh, okay, got it.
Back. But all it does is just look like this. So I've just created this thing called API key, this variable, and I can use this. So when you run your function, all of these GS files get compiled into one big file. So really, this is just convenience for me that I separate them. So what I'll do is I'll just hide that for a minute, copy in my cloud, just because it's the sort of thing I'll forget to change and whatever, and I'm just paranoid about. Okay, so there we go. Okay, bring this back. So it's now got the API key in. Probably I'll click on this at some point during the live stream.
I'll blur it out.
But whatever, we'll try. So here we go now. We're back to here, right?
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is go and what do we call this variable? So this is where the fun starts now, is we've got that function ready. Let's go and do something with it. So we'll call it natural language data. And we're going to just call this now with this retrieve sentiment function. So we're going to call it from up here and send it this piece of feedback.
Yep.
So we've gone into the loop, into the row, pulled out the feedback piece. Then we send that here to that function. Function goes off to Google Cloud with this API stuff, and then down here it returns that whatever it gets back from the API for us. And now we've got that back here now in our main function. So I think we can give this a try now. If this works, we're golden, and we'll be out where
I have high belief. I believe it's so great not to have to write code myself on the stream. This is way more fun. I can see why people enjoy this.
Okay, cool. It's fun to do as well. Yeah. Let me just check for one moment. I think we're good.
Let's do it. I believe it. Just you got to run it. You got to run and see.
I need to add permissions now because we've added a third party. So let's see. So we're connecting to the spreadsheets, connecting to an external service, and adding that custom sidebar or custom menu thing. So that's why we have these permissions. So let's allow. Look. So there we go. So it was terrible, and the score was minus 0.7. So what it does is it sends back a score between -1 and 1 for your sentiment, with a magnitude as well. And I mean, this is like at a basic level. We're really looking at this. You can go, you can delve into this more and get more in-depth kind of sentiment stuff. But for this project, this works quite well. So you can see this one here was 0.8 as well, was negative 0.8 rather. So let's quickly submit a positive one. Mode 3, beginner, amazing. Super. I wonder if, I mean, who knows whether Google knows that, but we'll see. So we added something positive. Let's just run it again quickly. So it obviously recognized that one as, now it's a score of 0.9, a positive. So now we're in a pretty good position. So basically, I'm going to skip over this because I'm going to assume that the feedback's always given in this one. So the last thing we'll do quickly is just we need to actually now get the sentiment score. So let me just see where I put that.
Yeah, so it should be NL data dot.
Yeah,
I'm trying
exactly.
to.
So what I need
I
to do
got
just,
this. I can figure it out.
I'm going to create an empty variable first,
Yep.
just to hold that score. Just string. Okay, so and I've just defined it outside the loop there, so it's available inside the loop and outside the loop. So let's copy this in. So we'll do this line next. Just NL data dot the document sentiment, which goes into here. And then that gives me that object there. So like that would be an example. And then I can drill right down and actually get this sentiment score, which is basically saying go inside this sentiment data, which is this object here,
And get the
just
score,
get
yeah.
dot score to get that. So that's not too bad. And then we can go sheets, which is, if I go back up here, is my sheet object, the form response object. And we'll say get range, and we want the row is I plus 2, I believe. Let's see, because it starts when it's at the count, when the count is at 0, we want to put the sentiment score here, which is on row 2. When the loop counter is 1, we want to be on row 3. When the loop counter is
Okay, interesting. So the rows are not based on the array; they're actually correctly counted. So you just have to offset. Got it. I think I got this.
Yeah, just a little offset there. So the I is just the counter of the loop,
Right.
Which I brought in from up here.
Right. So 0, and then okay, got it.
Yeah. So
And because we have the header, we know when we're loop 0, we're on row 2. Loop 1, we're on the row 3.
Yeah, exactly. This. So then we'll set the value of that sentiment score. So let's drop it in. Save, and then let's go back now to here and run the tool from here now. Cool. So there it goes. It's added those sentiment scores. So what it's done is taken this. All it's done is taken this data, looped over it, and sent these 3 things off to Google Cloud, and got back the natural language sentiment. So we better now do something, because that's fun, but I could have just given you those. I mean, it hasn't done much useful yet. So let's actually go and add the email bit, because that's when it becomes useful.
Yeah.
So we're going to take the same approach of going and creating a dedicated function for the email piece. And again, this is a great another good tip actually, is to create functions like this where it's all modular, because then I can call this function now, this retrieve sentiment, from somewhere else as well. So if I need it in another part of my program, or if I want to copy and paste this into a different project, it's just there and it works. It's not like buried in one giant monolithic function. So it's really good practice to keep spreading these out into their own. So we'll do that again here as well by creating a function to create the draft email. Draft. And this one, we're going to pass in a whole bunch of stuff actually. So I'll copy them in.
So
basically,
how would someone kind of understand how to, how the the kind of Gmail API works within, app script?
yeah, good. So we'll go to why is this so small? You know what? After when you've done video recording or streaming or whatever, I'm sure you find this, and you've had everything zoomed on 150%.
Yeah.
You finish the script, the stream or the recording, you set everything back to 100%, and you're like,
Yeah. When people look at my screen, they're like, "Are you old?" I'm like, "No. I just stream a lot."
Eventually, I'll just forget one day to set it back, and just from then on, I'll be 150% person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were talking about Gmail, right? So we come into app script reference, and then Gmail overview, and it's
got it. Okay, yeah. So it's pretty.
We have this nice wrapper called Gmail app, which just gives you a bunch of information, and you'll see how it's like unbelievably simple to write. The actual line that creates the draft is just like 4 words, and it creates those draft emails. It's like,
right.
really does the heavy lifting for you. So AppScript is really nice like that. So we will drop in. So basically what we if you remember, up here, when we were looping over, we got the row of data and we split the row up into all these little pieces. We want all of those pieces of the building blocks for the email.
Right.
So when we call the email, which is down here, we're going to say create draft.
You want to pass them in.
We want to pass all those, exactly, those building blocks. So we'll copy them in. So we're going to pass the timestamp, the email. What do I need to actually, I think the way I've written this is not going to work.
You need to be in the loop because those are not recognizable outside of the loop.
Let me see. Yeah, I want to be inside the loop here.
Yeah.
So, because otherwise they were not going to be very happy. So let me just check.
They're still not recognizing it.
It needs to be inside the if block there.
There you go.
So it's funny though, sometimes it should recognize those ones.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I don't know. If you rewrite it, I'm sure it'll remove that little squiggly line.
Let's see. Let's keep going. So anyway, so we want to now create this draft. So down here in the create draft, we're going to have those same things being passed through. And basically, if we do the same idea, we're going to copy in the comments. So we want to go and get these templates, which we need to go and create actually.
Right.
So basically, in one of these other sheets, I'm going to have a positive template and a negative template, which are like little paragraphs of text that will form the basis of the email. So I'll copy them in, and then I think you'll see what I'm talking about. So how are we doing time-wise?
We're doing great. No problem. This is super fun. What I love about this is if I had known this instead of VBA, which was just a disaster for me, and like it ruined my ability to enjoy writing code, this is actually really this is fun.
Yeah, AppScript is fun. It's I think it's much nicer than VBA to get into. I mean, I haven't looked at VBA for a while, but AppScript definitely feels, especially now, it got a big update in 2020, so it's now up to date with current JavaScript. So it definitely feels more modern.
Yeah, this feels great. This feels like fun. You're not convinced. Like I'm still going to write scripts in Airtable, but this is something I would have fun writing for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So what we're going to do is go to, we'll call this one templates. We're going to go to this sheet here and grab these two templates ready to use. So we'll get the templates. Then what's the next thing we're going to do is select the positive or negative template based on that sentiment score. And then we're going to write a subject line to an email, and then we'll write the body of the email, and then we can create the draft. So that, again, that's sort of thinking this through. They're the steps. So this is pretty easy. There shouldn't be any, there's no loops or anything like that in this one. So again, let's just speed up the process a little bit. So spreadsheet app, I probably could have made, this could be a global variable again. I could have done that if I wanted, actually, thinking about it. But I go and get the template sheet just by reference to the name. There's an empty place, just an empty variable to hold my thing. And now I have this sentiment score. And this is where the interesting thing is we'll say if the sentiment score is greater than 0, then the template is going to equal the template sheet dot get range, and we're going to go and get the one that's on row 2 here.
Right.
Which is like the positive one. So we'll say it's row 2, column 2, and get that value there that's in that cell. And then else template is the same thing, but it's on row 3.
Got it.
Yeah. So that's all that is. It just all it's gone and grabbed that paragraph text and put it into that variable. So subject line, I'm going to copy that in to save some time. That just adds the timestamp there just to make it unique. The body. So the body, again, I'll copy it in and then we can talk about it just to... so it says,
HTML,
hi,
yeah.
then we pass in that variable name, so that's one of the building blocks. Then that piece of templated code comes in. Then it adds a bunch of stuff. Then it pastes in that experience level, whether you're a beginner or intermediate. And then finally it adds that little bit of feedback. And the reason I did this was, the whole idea was that I never had to go and look in the Google Sheet. So I could just I'd go to my draft email folder. Oh, I've got 10 emails and I can see exactly what all the feedback the person had in that draft email. So I can just reply immediately from there and I don't have to switch back and forth. And then this is the bit now where it's, super simple. But maybe what we should do actually is just do our old friend in the console.log body and just see if we can run the program before we get to this last bit, because we've got a big chunk of code there, which is kind of...
We should get three, 2 positive, 2 negative, 1 positive. I
so
believe
all those red lines up there have gone now, so that's better. So yeah, exactly. So we'll just run it from here again. Okay, so put that, looks good on that side. We'll go to the execution log. Okay, maybe it didn't give me the...
So I think you console log the whole object and maybe not the dot body.
There we go.
Oh no, it looks good.
So there we go. Now, so it was because I remember actually, if I run it from here, it did not go and... I had to go. I should use the executions to find the stuff. It logs it here when you run it in the editor. You can find all the logs. Also, but anyway, so here's the email that's created, and it has all these HTML tags in because it doesn't interpret them obviously in the logger. The email we'll create will be an HTML email, and it will log those. So they'll just space it out a little bit for us. But that looks good. That's promising. So the last thing, this is where it's super easy. So we say Gmail app dot create draft.
Whoa, that's really cool, actually.
That's it. And then I put in email. Subject we wrote was just subject. Body we leave blank because what we're doing is putting in a special HTML body.
Right.
So that's just like a little nuance there. But that again, you might not know. You wouldn't necessarily know that without having gone to read. Let's see here. Gmail app.
You have Gmail draft.
It's this second one here with the options. The options is a JavaScript object that specifies advanced parameters, one of which is the HTML body.
Got it.
Which then lets me put those tags in, or images, or whatever you want to do, or links and things. So let me check. I have made a mistake here because I called it body there for my variable. So I've got to pass in the body, not the HTML body. So just spread that out a little bit. Let's save unexpected token. Oh, I know why. It needs an empty string there for the body. That's why.
Oh, it needs something, even if you're passing in the
yeah, exactly. And so I'm telling it, the body is nothing. It's a blank string. But it still expects to see something there because it wouldn't care if the body of the text was blank. It would just send it with email and subject. But I can just pass in that now.
Got it.
And now what we'll do is let's give it a test again, and we'll give it a test from here again. I'll come to my drafts. Okay, we're empty in drafts.
Yeah, this is it. This is the moment. Let's see if it works. I'm in awe of this. This is really cool.
Good stuff. So let's jump quickly to some permission. What did I add this time?
The Gmail.
The Gmail app, of course. I added Gmail, so of course. So now we need to add that. Make sure. So you just do this once each time you add a scope or a service.
Yeah.
You don't have to do this obviously every time. So.
Did you run it?
Let's run it. Okay, that doesn't look too good. Let's see.
No, you haven't run it. You haven't run it, I think.
No, not run it. Let's try.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, that was better. There we go.
Boom.
Boom.
I think success. We're going to do success.
Okay, so, if this was the negative feedback, it's basically just saying it was really useful to have the feedback. I can add,
Oh no.
I will try harder and send, and then that one's sent. So let's get rid of those ones. The final thing we'll do is we'll just make sure we put a timestamp there to say we've created the draft.
So while you're doing this, you don't see it on the stream, but I've got confetti streaming down. Very
well,
important.
Well, actually,
No. We did it.
This is the champagne and the confetti for one more. There's one more.
Okay, we'll do it again. We'll do it again. Add the timestamps and we'll do the confetti again.
Okay, cool. So let me see. Where do I want to add this inside the loop?
You're such a perfectionist. I would have, if once the draft shows up, I would have been like, boom, done. Never looking at the script again.
Yeah, exactly. So all we'll do, this should be easy though, famous last words. A row I plus 2 again, same friend. Then it's column 7 this time. Yep. Set the value, and we'll put in the variable D. Of course, we haven't defined that yet, so we better define that. D is just going to be a new date. Save. So this time when we run, it should just fill in that date for us to say it's confirmed. Here we go. Okay, cool. So that now next time we run it, it'll just ignore these rows, because it's done. So there's those 3 again. So
I'm putting confetti again.
Confetti. All right, one last thing.
Okay,
we're gonna set a trigger. So the last thing we'll do is
nice.
Right now I have to run it manually. Let's automate it by just.
Oh, I didn't know there were triggers in AppScript.
Yeah. So we'll just run it whenever somebody submits a form. It runs that function for them. So we'll just save that. That's all I have to do. It's another.
I've been talking shit. This is great. I can't believe no one put me back in my place. I didn't know that there was this kind of trigger stuff on form submission. Really cool.
Super powerful, actually. I don't think a lot of people realize that, but you can do really some cool stuff. So I think we're ready now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's submit another response. Let me drop this into chat.
Yeah, go for it, folks. And
then let's see if some of you kind folks wish to just put in some responses. We'll see what happens.
I'm filling it out. Right. I should see some. Boom.
Okay, so I'm just going to sit in my drafts folder here and just see if we get some stuff coming through. So I have one.
Is that me?
Let's see. Yep.
That was me. Boom. I think we can do success. I think we can do.
Cool, actually.
I'm really impressed. I've learned a lot, actually. So we're going to, I did not know first that there was triggers. I didn't know that you could actually use JavaScript, native JavaScript within, well, not native, but kind of integrated with Google services. So, this is actually fantastic. I'm not going to start, migrating everything I have into Sheets, but knowing that this is available is really cool.
Yeah.
So I'm sure folks. So tell us. So I want to do. Oh, we're seeing some more. Awesome.
Yeah.
I'd love to see appreciate all the folks kind of responding. I'd love to see. You want to click into those, or you feel it's too risky?
Yeah, sure. I'll send them. It was really bad. All right, sorry.
That's so great.
So I'll just send these to say hi to these people. Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, no, this is amazing. If I was on the stream, I'd be clapping. So I am. This was much cooler than I thought possible, frankly, on Sheets. So I wouldn't say, Ben, that I'm a convert. I'm not there yet, but this was really cool. So I'm excited to build something similar in Airtable. And what I'd love from you is like, talk me through as I'm building, like, what are those moments that you're like, oh, that's cool. That's not cool. I wonder how you do that. So we're actually going to build something extremely similar. I won't do the draft because that's not available in Airtable. But what we'll do is create like a base where you have courses, folks can submit feedback, and then when folks submit feedback, we're going to go and run a sentiment API. Does that sound good?
That sounds good. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
And one thing I'd say is I think that we're like in this real golden age right now with these automation tools becoming more and more accessible. And so I think that, just knowing a bunch of them is actually a really good thing, in that you can sort of skip from one to the other, depending on where your tool stack is for your business or your work or your clients or your colleagues. So, you might find yourself jumping between the two, and
Totally.
a bunch of
So
tools.
you should see my screen, Ben.
Yep,
Folks should see my screen. Is this the first time that you're looking at an Airtable base, Ben?
I've watched a couple of videos actually. I once Googled what is the most complex Airtable
Okay.
into YouTube, and it was some guy who's like super into the sort of quantified self stuff.
Oh, Chris Dancy.
Yep, that's the one. He had some completely nutso Airtable. But anyway, apart from that one, this is pretty much the first one I've seen.
Okay, I'm excited. Okay, so we're gonna assume that like I actually have this one kind of built out in the sense of like I have a course and folks submit feedback to my course. So let's actually build that form that you created, right? So we're gonna call this like feedback.
Yep.
Right. So name is gonna be like we're gonna call this name. Name feels fine. Let's delete. So in Airtable, the first thing you'll notice is that like there's not an infinite amount of rows. Right, so we're like you have to actually create the rows, so we can actually start from scratch, like this. And let's give myself like I'm gonna give myself like an example where I'm providing feedback. So you had level, like what is your level of expertise?
Yep.
So I'm gonna use a single select, which lets you create a drop down, like a predetermined kind of your check mark. Similarly, so you had beginner, intermediate, and phenom. So let me know. I'd be curious in the chat, like who is this? Is this a lot of folks' first experience with Airtable? Our folks. I know a lot of folks come back to the stream, so they're like pros. But let's actually no color here. No color. Create field. So I am intermediate. And then what was you had like? What is your feedback?
Yeah, just what do you think of product feedback?
Okay, we'll give this a rich text field. And then you had, which product, right? And you have multiple courses, right? You don't just have the one.
Yeah, exactly. So I could do a drop down like that.
Yeah. So I'd actually think this is one of the things I want to, for folks who maybe aren't familiar with Airtable, is like, well, what I would love is to kind of get a sense of like, what is the average score I'm getting across each one of my classes and things like that, which I know you can do in Sheets, but in Airtable, we would build, new tables. That's all courses. And I'm going to call it like, let's say the essential guide to Airtable. And then maybe I'll do like, the advanced guide to Airtable. And then, what is up with Sheets? I don't know. That feels like a good course, right? And I can keep adding to these, right? So let's say I'm just going to have just the name for now. And then I could say, okay, well, I want that single select, not actually to be a single select, but to allow folks to select which course they took. So I'm going to call this course. We're going to link to courses, in which that is allow us to do is say, okay, well, it's going to bring a drop down of those. And so if I add a new course, is Sheets still in 2021, right? Now this becomes available in the dropdown. Is Sheets still in 21? And it'll also be reflected on our form. What else did you have there?
That was it. Yeah, it was just name, email.
Oh, right. Email is a good one. Right. So one thing that folks maybe who aren't familiar with Airtable is like, why do I need to define what's going into the field. And really, that's where I think the biggest differentiation with Airtable with Sheets is like, this is more of a database. You actually have to give it a name. You have to give it a row header in Sheets Think, but you also have to specify what it is. And what that allows you to do is, create different types of views. And if folks are interested, let me know in the chat and I'll jump into that. But really, we're trying to recreate what you're building. Okay, so now we have our feedback, right? So now we want to say like, okay, we want to build a form on top of this. Right. So what I just did there, I created a form view. This lets you create a form just like Google Sheets does. And I can kind of adjust this. So let's say feedback for the course. And let's skip this. So name, level, feedback, course, email. That all seems right. Let me actually move this one. This should be here. And now we can open the form. There we go. So I'll call him Ben Collins. I don't know what you're Ben at collins.com. Let's say your level is beginner. Whoops. And you were like, it's terrible. Terrible course. Much prefer Sheets. And here you select.
Course.
Say that again?
We both need spelling courses on the line.
Yeah, that's for sure. Typing on the stream is really hard.
Yeah.
So when you submit that, brings you here. And if we go back into, let's say, all feedback, we're going to call this view. Right? Okay. So your kind of two things, right? So you said sentiment score. That's something we wanted to kind of, and we're going to call this a number field because it returns a number. Okay. So far, right, I'm kind of building the same thing. What I'll make sure in the form view is to remove that sentiment score, right? And I'll make all of these required. So for folks who aren't familiar with Airtable, I'm giving you like a little speed round here. Boom. And boom. So I'm going to share. Actually, no, I'll share a little later. Okay. So now we want to do like, okay, what is the sentiment score? And can we trigger an email when the form is submitted based off of the sentiment score? Right?
Yep.
Does that make sense? Awesome.
Yep.
So we're going to go into automations. Automations let you set up trigger action sequences on top of your Airtable base, similar to what you had in terms of like run the script when a form is submitted. We're going to do the kind of exact same thing here. So we're going to create an automation. We're going to call this new feedback response. All right. Okay. So then we choose a trigger. This is what kind of sets your automation in motion. In this case, we're going to say when a record is created. You can also have like when a Google Calendar shows up or when something happens in Google Sheets. See, there's some Sheets Airtable synergy.
It's like one small step, one higher step of abstraction.
In what sense? Than Google Sheets or?
Yeah, than AppScript. It's letting you connect to these things, kind of like the way Zapier would.
Yeah. So it's really that kind of trigger action sequence. Yeah. I think the difference with AppScript is maybe like they're more granular in AppScript, or I don't know. Can you like trigger on a Gmail invite or something like that?
You can get more complex with programmatic triggers.
Okay.
Where you actually define them programmatically what they can do. So you can do a lot more than just the simple triggers we looked at before.
Okay.
I'm not sure it's that exactly in that use case.
Right. Okay. So in our case, we're going to simply say when record is created, when someone submits in the feedback table, right? Assuming that's the only way records are created in that table, right? So let's run a test. So we got record. Which record did we get? We got this course was great, right? So right now, in like how I like to think of us, like in memory, whenever a record is created, it's going to go ahead and trigger this automation. It's going to set this automation in motion. And at this point, we want to say like, okay, well, go and call the API, right? And take the feedback and say like, okay, is this good? Is this bad? Return a response based off of is the feedback good or bad? And then send an email with that template. So we're going to do that interim step, right? So we're going to add an action. This is what you want the automation to do. So examples, you can send a Slack message, send an email, post to Twitter or Facebook and do things in Airtable, right? So create records, update information. In our case, we're going to run a script. And this is where I practice my developer skills.
This is a pretty new thing to Airtable, right? Didn't they launch this recently?
Yeah, I think we launched this in May this year or March this year. So Airtable scripting is relatively new. What's kind of cool, so for folks who aren't developers, if you go to the App Store, the app marketplace, and go to scripts, you can actually find examples of scripts that folks have written, and then understand. And I did a Learn Airtable scripting series. So if folks are interested in Learn Airtable scripting, reach out to me and I'll give you like a 4-part series. I ran that on Twitch. Okay, and this is actually JavaScript. So just like you were writing JavaScript, we're also going to write JavaScript. What we're first going to do is input, that feedback. So we're going to input. So we're going to say feedback. It's going to make that information from step 1 available. So this was all the work you did around looping. This is actually doesn't need that. And when you went to say like, oh, get that piece of information in that loop. Well, here it's more of like a UI to do that. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm slowly feel like you're enjoying this, Ben. You might be a convert. So we're going to insert the feedback. And then let's go and get that feedback. So we're going to say input config, let input config equal input dot config, right? And then we should have input config. This is just allowing us to use dot feedback, right? So let's console.log this. I just want to make sure we have access to the value that's in feedback.
Yep.
So we're testing this. Oh, it's sensitive. There we go. Okay, it figured it out before, but let's do it again. Okay, so we now have the feedback variable, right, available in input config.feedback. So now we want to send this to an API, right? We want to take the feedback, send it to an API. I wasn't able to get Google API to work, not because of the script, but just because I had to like submit an app or whatever. But I found this other API, which is kind of a sentiment scorer.
Yep.
Right. So we're gonna go to. Let me get the JavaScript fetch version here. Okay. So we're gonna go to this URL. Right. We're gonna input the text. That's gonna be the text, that feedback we just got. We're gonna do a get call. And this is my API key that I will change after this stream. And then I input the host. So essentially there's kind of 3 parameters to running this API: the text, the API key, and the host. And then the response is going to be like which keywords and what score do you give that sentence. So this is what we're going to kind of want. We can actually use positive or negative. And based on the response, whether it's positive or negative, we're going to kind of output, a little bit of text. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what the Google one was doing as well. And the even the bit of code there, the JavaScript fetch is it's different than the example I showed, but it's
it's very similar.
Other app calls I've done in AppScript.
Totally.
So that bit's identical, yeah.
Okay, now let me remember this. So let sentiment equal, and I got to run a fetch call, right? And I want to input the URL. So let me actually look at the documentation. Let me go into fetch. Okay, let response sentiment equal, let me go sentiment response. I'll get the whole response there. Fetch and then the URL. So we're going to give these little back quotes. And then, so I'm going to copy paste this. See, programming, a lot of copy pasting. Let me actually remove these backticks for now. feel like we're at the point where in the stream where we've got the diehards. The diehards are still with us, which is awesome. So appreciate y'all for staying and learning with us. So, okay, and then I need to put in my API key. So I'm ampersand, just getting the API key. So rapid dash API. So the X is usually saying that it's a parameter, so you don't need to include that. X rapid API. Let me know in the chat if it's too small. I can try zooming in a little, but I'll copy paste the call in the chat. If anyone .api, and then I want the other parameter. Awesome, thanks, Jonathan. Rapid API host. Now, if I was as good as you and organized, I would actually put these in like input parameters at the top to make it easier. But we're just going to copy paste stuff. And now, okay, so this API call is just taking this bit of text, great value in its price range, and returning it. So let's console log. Can't forget there we go. And then console.log await sentiment response.json. So this is just gonna, make it readable. Oops, too many .json. Oops. Console.log await sentiment. That should work. Let's give it a go. Sentiment response.json. That's weird. Let's see what's happening here. Console.log. So it's not recognizing. Oh, I forgot some. This should be one tick. And for some reason, it's not closing my.
I think there you go.
There we go. Oh no, that didn't work either. So for some reason, it's seeing this as a URL. Why do I have rapid API? Let me actually. I have it here. Let's copy paste this. There we go. And this I know worked. Still not giving me the JSON properly. Let's actually run this and see what happens. It's okay, folks. We're going to get through it. Okay. So this API call works, right? So it returns a response. And then if I copy this right here, and here we're saying sentiment response. But it won't let us JSONify it for some reason. Oh, I forgot the await. See? This I do all the time. I forgot the await. You got to put await in front of fetch. That's the one thing. There we go. Okay. So now we have our response. And what we want is the type. Right? So we're seeing that it's a positive response. However, right now we're inputting like great value. We're not inputting the actual value.
Yep.
So let's fix that. So what we need to do if we want to input a variable, we need to put a backtick. Now, this is all things you know because you've been on the stream before. I would not have known this had I not been on the stream a bunch of times. And here, what we're saying is... No, go for it. You can bring him on the stream. And now let's... So I want to bring the kid on the stream.
Sorry about that.
No, it's cool. You can bring him on. He's got to learn Airtable. You have a son or daughter?
I got two sons, and that was my 3-year-old.
He's got to start learning now.
Yeah.
He's gotta, be an Airtable expert by the time he's 12.
Well, he'll be indoctrinated into sheets.
So here I'm just inputting, so what I called before, which is input config dot feedback. So now it's actually going to take that value in feedback and pass it into the call. So I'm going to run this again. Right. And so it's saying it's a positive response. The score is 0.8. And the keywords that I found was great. Right. So let me just make sure. What was the console? This course was great. So it entered on the word great and response. So now we both have like whether it's positive or negative, and we could actually, based off of that, kind of output a value. So I forget how to do that. So let me just check. So we essentially want to say if we want sentiment response dot, which one do we have here? Sentiment. It's an array. We have type.
Yep.
Is that an array?
That's an object.
Yeah. Yeah, but the keyword. Oh no, so it's just dot type.
Yeah, that should just give you a single string.
Equal. So am I not writing this right?
You have to put brackets around it. Yeah.
Positive, but it's not giving me. So let me see the console.log. So let me console.log a specific response.
Well, it's sentiment response.json dot.
Right. So I need to give this into a variable. So let sentiment response equal, and then I can say dot type. Or actually, just give it all. I can give it the whole thing, and then we can go into dot type.
You probably want to give it a different name. Yeah.
Yeah, sentiment response JSON. There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, you're already a pro at this.
This bit's the same as
AppScript. So now we can say if sentiment response JSON dot. Am I saying that right? Type. Let me actually console.log sentiment response JSON because it's feeling a little weird. Okay, and then we can say sentiment dot. What if I console.log dot type? So folks are asking in the API what happens like if it's positive or negative. That really depends on the API, right?
I'm just replying to actually. I might as well just say it out loud. I think what they usually do is break the feedback or the paragraph up into little pieces and give scores to the pieces. And so I think in that case, if it's, it will send back as saying you've got a score of a positive and a negative score, and then the overall score will end up being kind of in the middle and perhaps not that useful. So, it's not perfect in the way that we both built it, where you just kind of use the high level sentiment that might miss some of the nuance. But you can get much more detail than we have with the API, by looking with the data it sends back, splits up and gives you more detailed responses. Cool.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is an object, and we have keywords.
Yeah, so if you do, now that you've got it, if you do that sentiment response JSON dot type, it should be good.
It's not giving me dot type. Let's say dot score is greater than 0.
Yep.
We're going to say return. So we're going to say, template, and we'll give template, let template equal like that, equal, thanks for the great feedback. Glad you enjoyed the course. And then else. And the reason I'm creating this template, you fetched it from the table, which is something you can do as well. But in this case, we actually want to create the template here so we can then pass it into the email. But this could be, based on the nuances of the score, you go into Airtable and then find the record that is like perfectly, but it's actually not that like, it's not ideal. I think in like a if else here is better. So we can say, template, sad to hear you didn't love it. You didn't love it. I appreciate the feedback. Okay. So I'm not sure that it'll go under 0. I think so.
Yeah, if it's negative feedback, it'll go. It should be between -1 and 1.
Let me remember how return works here. So output. Yeah, so I think output dot set, and then I want to say, template is template. Right, and so that will allow us. So let me just console log template. That will allow us in the future step to actually go and get the template and write the email. I was like really thinking my skills were better at doing this. Okay, so we got the thanks for the great feedback. Glad you enjoyed the course. There we go. And now we can actually send an email with that response. So we can say, go to step 1. Oh, I haven't connected my account. Let me try to do that here. There we go. Okay. And then we're going to send this to the person who submitted. So from step 1. And then we have email, insert, subject. I guess I could also say like a subject based on the response, but I'm just going to say thanks for the feedback. And we can just go and get the template. Now, I think what's cool about what you did is that I actually can't kind of send a draft. It has to be an email, or what I could do is like copy paste the output into a new field. But then I have template, insert. So I can say, you had to like put it into a function. I can just say, hi, step 1, insert the name. Hi, Aron, template. Have a great day.
Yep.
And then done. Done. We turn this on. And now we have the new feedback response. So if someone submits a new form, refresh this. And we can go, so Aron, I'll send it to myself. And I could have recapped as well the level in the email. Yep. Those are all accessible from step 1. I thought the course was great. Essential guide to Airtable, submit. And if all went well, I forgot to put the sentiment score. I could do that, but let's just see whether this ran. So it ran successfully. And let me go into my email. Let me hide this for a second. All right. And if I come back to here, we automated that email, right? Thanks for the great feedback. Glad you enjoyed the course. Have a great day. So, I think the biggest difference with Sheets is that it's kind of like at the UI level. You do need to write a little bit of code to get to that template, but everything else that kind of is at like that trigger action sequence, and so required quite a bit less code.
Yeah, definitely. It's really nice actually how it you can set it up with if you go back to your Airtable there, and then on the right hand side you had the the logic of the code is just laid out. There it is with the trigger, the action, and the Gmail. That kind of view right now, I think, is super helpful. Just because sometimes when you have just 100 lines of code, you lose view of what on earth you're doing.
Yeah, totally.
Visual. So you have to, it's definitely a little harder to see that. So it's nice and visual. It definitely reminds me. It looks like my Zaps do.
Yeah, no, totally. So I'm glad that I feel like I've at least shown you a little bit of what it can do, and I do want to kind of it's actually relatively easy here to add the sentiment score. You can also add a timestamp. So there's a last modified time.
Yep.
So you can say timestamp, like you called it, would be last modified time, and you could say, okay, tell me when the sentiment score changed and update the field.
Yep.
Right? So let's save that, create the field. So let's imagine via the API, it updates to 1. This automatically creates the timestamp. So you don't actually have to do that through the code.
Yep.
And you could say, submit time. I'm just trying to show off here. That's what I'm doing here. Which would be, created time for the field.
Yep.
So we can kind of get a sense of when it was created, when we added the sentiment score, when we sent the email. So yeah, that is Airtable. I mean, that is a very small part of Airtable. I hope that this, hopefully it'll show you kind of, everything that's possible just as an example. That said, yeah, I think that's it. I think that's what we wanted to show. I'm gonna run a little success. Yeah, there we go. I think this deserves some confetti here. So, on behalf of myself, and everyone, so huge thanks, Diane, Colleen, who had to go, Jonathan, and everyone in the chat, Noah, really appreciate y'all joining. If this was your first time on the stream, love to see you again. We do this every week. And Ben, huge thanks to you for joining. This was a ton of fun. And I really appreciate you.
It was a lot of fun as well.
Yeah. It means a lot that you showed me so many things since I last jumped into Sheets that I'm actually quite excited to play around with app script. And yeah, this was huge fun. So with that, huge thanks to you, Ben. And thanks to everyone for joining.
Thanks,
and I'll see you next week, everyone. Bye.